Good morning, everyone. How are you all today? Good. I am so glad to see so many people in the room. It brings me great joy to have us back in person. How many of you are excited to be with other people? Yay! Awesome. Thank you for surviving the pandemic, and I mean that with great sincerity. My name is Shawn Edwards, and I am from Genesee County, and I have awesome coworkers, colleagues, friends with me today, and we will all be presenting, and we're so glad that you've come to our presentation. I promise you will not leave without additional tools in your toolbox. So here's the code. You ready for it? Look at everybody's like, yeah, give me that code. Give me that code. I need that code. All righty. So the code is 44. 44. And upon departure, we will give you the extra code for leaving. So we're going to talk today about responding to community trauma. Is that what you all signed up for? All righty, we're glad you're in the right space. So I am going to have each of my colleagues introduce themselves as they come up to share their part. So first up, I am going to give the mic to Elizabeth Birch, and Elizabeth is going to come up and share with us some very interesting things about the Flint water crisis. Hi, how are you? Good. No, you're fine. Do you need the code? Nope. You don't? You don't? Okay. All righty. So come on up, Elizabeth.
All right. I feel like I should do the game show running.
Yes.
Yeah. Where's my applause, though? Yeah. I'm so excited to be here. Okay. Hi, everyone. Is that really loud? I'm not used to talking with a microphone. Okay. Thank you. John, in the back, if I'm too loud, are you going to tell me? All right, thank you. Oh, I need my clicker. Sorry, guys. Is this the first time we've done this in person? Yeah, okay. So we've done this presentation a few times, so that's good. But it's the first time in person, so it's a little nerve-wracking a little bit, but it feels good to be in front of people and not just like staring at screens. So again, my name is Elizabeth Birch. I used to be a home-based clinician when I first started at RCMH, and then I was promoted to a supervisor position. And in the midst of that, I was only in the position a couple months when the Flint water crisis emergency declaration was made. And because I had just moved into a new position, I didn't quite have, I wasn't well established in it yet, so I went to my boss and I said, is there anything I can do? And then, and now, 6 years later, I'm still overseeing programs that started as a result of the Flint water crisis. So this was just the agenda of kind of what we're going to do today. I'm going to cover our response to the Flint water crisis, which in some ways really did propel us forward to consider staff wellness as a result of some of the things that we saw our staff going through. Then we're going to talk about how we are utilizing mindfulness in our workplace, and then how social justice and racial equity has also impacted us and what we are doing to address it. So lots of good stuff today. This is where I was supposed to start my introduction, which I already did. Thank you, Carrie. John? It was. Did I accidentally turn it off or something? Let me not push buttons.
You want me to push them forward?
I mean, it was working just a second ago. So I flipped through all those other slides. This is the kind of day I'm having also, by the way. John, we've got a battery issue.
Let me just do like I do it.
Right. Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you so much for your patience. It should be on your desktop. Did he find it? Okay, there we go. There we go.
Yay. All right. It's a good thing I'm not like petrified to be up here or anything, but I am in a room full of, people who understand mental health. So if I did have some kind of episode, I would be in good hands. All right. So how many people remember the Flint water crisis? Okay. Good. So I know there's been so many other things that have happened, and it has been, a while now. So this is just a very simplified timeline in case you need to refamiliarize yourself. So Flint actually switched their water source in April of 2014. Residents were complaining about it. They were protesting. They're like, why is my water brown and yellow and it smells bad? There's something wrong. But it really wasn't until September of 2015 when Dr. Mona held a press conference and said, hey, we are noticing really high lead levels in children. She's a pediatrician. She's amazing. She wrote a book. And she really is considered the whistleblower in terms of the Flint water crisis. Then in December of 2015, Flint declared a state of emergency, which then was followed in January by the governor declaring a state of emergency, and then President Obama declaring a state of emergency. So we had, 2 years there where there was something wrong, and residents were told that it was fine, and it wasn't fine. So in January of 2016 is really when things started picking up for us. This looks way more complicated than it needs to be. So whenever there is a emergency, Red Cross comes in and they help to sort of try to organize whatever the response is going to be. This was all the different areas that our community came together and felt was important for us to address. So you had water resources, right? Coordinating all these bottles of water. I mean, that in itself was a huge undertaking. Education, how are we going to educate the community on the use of filters, when to change their filters, all of that. Communication was huge. Physical health, obviously, people were very concerned about the impact that the lead had on their bodies. Mental health, which is us, and the control coordination, all that was the leads of each of those groups. So Genesee Health System served as the mental health lead here. I just kind of described that. So of the mental health part of the response, this was the different subgroups. It was a really bizarre time. So we had the U.S. Public Health Corps folks come in for 2 weeks. And so if you think about an emergency or a disaster, right, people come in and they help. But in this man-made emergency where there was very complicated issues, it felt like all these people were coming in and leaving, and all these people were coming in and leaving. But this is one thing that they did help us with, was sort of of the mental health response, what are the things that we're going to work on? And so the main two things that we're going to talk about the two things that I oversaw here were the stress management, which is the caring for the caregiver type, and then psychological first aid was also part of that. So the stress management work group that I led was really about getting people together from the community to talk about how to support our workforce, because we had folks who were living it at home, right, and then coming into work and helping their clients or consumers with also navigating this Flint water crisis. So out of that group came sort of these these things down here. So we implemented monthly mindfulness. So that was not something we did before. We offered it once a month for 30 minutes, and we actually had our DBT group come in and lead it. We had varying, degrees that people come, but, if one person even shows up, that's something. Listening circles was something that we'll talk about more later, but that was really a time for staff who were impacted, whether it was only because they were working with it or because they were living and working with it, to just vent. I will note that while probably controversial, we did have a listening circle after the election of Donald Trump because it was so palpable, whether that's just polarizing views or whatever, but we did have one, and I think it was really good for staff. Again, no resolution, we're just listening and hearing people talk about the stress. So we did that related to the water crisis. And I will say that out of that, what we found there were people who were not exposed in their personal lives that, were joking about, making jokes about the water, which then led us to do some training around sort of cultural competency around those who had experienced the Flint water crisis. And then wellness days, I think it's very important, if you're able to do it, to have days that are, training and team building for our teams. The community education piece, I'm so happy that most of those people are still on my team. Sean, did you talk about this or did I talk about this? Okay. I mean, that is my team. That is my team. But I'm like, okay. Anyways, so this is anyone familiar with psychological first aid? Okay, yeah. So it's basically like mental health first aid, except for it's in response to a community crisis, right? And so one of the things that we did was we offered that for our entire community because everyone needed to know how to interact with somebody who had just gone through a trauma. So those are all staff that were hired through grant dollars as a result of the Flint water crisis. Most of them are still on my team or work at RCMH. We did door-to-door canvassing. Like, we went door-to-door and asked people, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, I kind of get goosebumps because I do feel like that community piece is something we're not able to do as much as we want to, and it was really great to be able to do that. So now we're going to mosey on into Carrie Chanter's part here, and you guys are going to be done listening to me talk, so thank you. All right, Carrie's going to talk about mindfulness in the workplace. Yes, please. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Chanter. Thank you. And I'm the Director of Prevention, Health, and Wellness at Genesee Health System. My part of this presentation is quite small compared to the rest of this awesome team, but I am going to talk about creating a culture of mindfulness in your workspace. By show of hands, can I just ask, does anybody have a worksite wellness program where they work? That's pretty typical. I think we all know what the importance is of worksite wellness. Actually, a lot of my background is in worksite wellness, and so when I came to GHS, I had all these tools, and I wanted to kind of get something going. And honestly, the nature of worksite wellness program, and now things are kind of changing to worksite well-being. That seems to be the new term, not worksite wellness, but worksite well-being. I knew that GHS had a pretty sturdy program for many years, but was like all wellness programs, they kind of ebb and flow. When the interest is there, they do really well. Maybe you get some funding, you do really good, and then it goes dormant a little bit, and then it goes up, and then it goes down. So I knew that it had been some time since our workplace wellness was really at its peak performance, but I was asked in my role to try to start a culture of mindfulness in the workspace. Full transparency. I was like, what? Like, of all the components of wellness, listen, I knew all about how to do blood pressure screenings and Weight Watchers at work and taking your HRA and giving incentives. Like, I knew all about that stuff. And I'm like, oh, God, mindfulness is not the thing I want to get into. But I said, okay, I'm off and running. I'm going to become a mindfulness expert. And honestly, although I was kind of kicking and screaming going, and it's been the best thing for me personally, and then also it's been really great and sustainable at our workplace, right? So, okay, just a kind of a little intro. So, just like even a workplace wellness program, creating any type of mindfulness momentum where you work is going to absolutely require executive team support from the very top. You can't just have directors and support. You have to have executive management on board, have to. And we were really fortunate because our CEO, there was no convincing. He got it. He understood it, especially coming out of the Flint water crisis. Like, we realized how important it was for not only the community, but our staff. Our staff needed something. And so I think that that's what kind of drove the mindfulness train, because I kind of wanted it a little different. I wanted a different train, but I'm glad that I paid attention to the momentum that was happening, and that really was with mindfulness, because that's where it's stuck. So what I did was I said, all right, well, we got to put a task force together or some sort of committee. And so we did form a committee. And basically, when you do that, you really need to find out those boots on the ground of people who have a natural interest. Who are the people in your different buildings or departments or floors that really are that person? Like, they live it, they're interested in it, and everyone kind of surrounds them like, what are they doing? Why are they so cool? Why are they so healthy? Why are they so positive? So you got to find those people, and really, ideally, they need to be at every level of management. From the very first person you might see entering the door of your establishment all the way up. So lots of levels would be amazing. That's ideal. So we were very fortunate to be able to form this crew. We were meeting monthly. And so some of the first 3 things that we tried to focus on were what are things, like our strategic plan, or what are things that we can do around policy, like what do we have inside at GHS that we can implement some policy? What about some programming, some mindfulness things that we can offer to our staff on a regular basis? And what can we do in our environment to change those things? When I think about environment, for instance, for worksite wellness, we all know about carpeted stairwells. We all know about walking meetings, standing meetings, those types of things. Like, we really needed to change the culture and the environment so that it was like okay to start a meeting with a mindful moment. Let's all take a moment to arrive. Let's all go around the circle for 3 minutes of the meeting and talk about what you're thankful for. And that needed to be accepted, because sometimes you get people go, God, one of these again. But it needed to be like okay and expected. So those are some of kind of our goals. Again, we've got a lot of buildings. How many buildings do we have, Elizabeth? And how many buildings do we have, Sean? We have a lot of buildings. 6, 10. More than, okay, we got 8 buildings. And so it took a lot of kind of that extra planning. So, like, consider yourself lucky if you have 1 building, because it just kind of captures you in a little bit. It's a little easier. But so we were really lucky to have multi-building participation. And again, we were meeting monthly and had active subcommittees to address those 3 priorities, which was policy, programming, and environment. Okay, so what did we do? Again, this is where our momentum was. Again, it was hard for me to not think of a little bit broader umbrella, like the wellness umbrella with mindfulness being under it. But you know what's really cool is that after we started doing this, now we're getting more momentum with our worksite wellness program. So whatever you have natural momentum with in your organization, I say go with it, even if it's not the full comprehensive workplace wellness thing. This has really worked out for us to pick up mindfulness and go with it, because a lot of our executive level staff had been through a lot of trainings about it. There's a Mindful Flint initiative. We've got a lot of local agencies that really have embraced mindfulness and do a lot of trainings in our community. So that's where the momentum was. So what did we do? Some examples of the things we did. We knew right away that one of the things we wanted to do was create an internal mindfulness resource page for our staff. And it's like on our landing page on the intranet. They can click on it, and there's a lot of links. And that's, you probably can't see it real well, but like that's kind of, it was very simple. We didn't have to create some crazy web page, but it was very simple. We had apps, articles, and tools, and a lot of them were just links to things, okay? And those have to be checked a lot, but that's every quarter we kind of look at those to make sure that they're still working and things. We also, what was cool is we had a website person who was constantly changing, like a weekly theme or a weekly mantra that people might say. So it did keep a little upkeep, but it was good. We also decided quickly after this that we wanted to create an external mindfulness page. That is still functioning, so you can always take a look at that. It was very similar to the staff one, at least the look and feel of it were. Some of the links weren't necessarily appropriate for the public, but what we did was we talked to staff and we're like, you know what? When you're talking about tools with your consumers, just make sure that you mention this. This might help them in their plan. We did a lot of stairwell messaging, weekly newsletters. We do still have a weekly newsletter that's highly read, and we're constantly putting mindfulness articles in there every Friday. Elizabeth mentioned having monthly mindfulness, which was started during the Flint water crisis. We decided, you know what, we can do this weekly. And part of that was because of COVID. Here we have another trauma upon our staff. It's been very traumatic for all of us, and we realized right away, like, okay, instead of monthly, because we were doing it face to face, let's do it weekly. We can do this. We have a task force full of people that know how to facilitate mindfulness. And one thing I will say on the side is that, you know what, you don't have to be an expert in mindfulness to facilitate a session. You know, you just kind of tell people, hey, this is what you're going to talk about. You're not an expert. You remind them about what mindfulness is. You do a definition at the front. You talk about maybe you know, self-love is your topic, and then you can always take them through a guided meditation from a trustworthy website. So we let people know you don't have to be an expert to run it. Also, another thing we decided during COVID is to do weekly virtual COVID listening circles. So just like Elizabeth said about the listening circles for staff in the community, people needed to talk. They just needed to be talked. There is no need to resolve anything, but we had different themes each week, and we have since stopped doing weekly COVID listening circles. Then it kind of became monthly, and there hasn't really been a lot of ask for that from staff lately, but that's how we addressed it. And then also the last two things is we have, like I said, we have a lot of local wellness and mindfulness groups, and so we participate on their advisory councils, and we've become really involved with Flint and mindfulness, so that we're kind of always in that circle. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Dexter, and he's going to take over.
Hello, my name is Dexter Clark, and currently what I do, I work in the community as far as community engagement, working with faith-based organizations and other organizations. But I want to let you know that I've been in the agency for a long time. So I've been around. And what I want to talk about, because you came here just to find out how do we deal with trauma, you know, in the agency? How do we work with staff and things when we're going through that? Now, I don't want you to raise your hand because you might be with somebody that's in your same agency, but if you're in an agency that is dealing with that, you know, that you go there and you're feeling stress and overwhelmed and you feel that they're not addressing things, that weighs on you. And it weighs on you because then you start seeing a lot of turnover. You know, people are going to other jobs and other agencies. And you know that you're doing a good work because you're in the service of helping people. But you're frustrated when the administration and when politics and policies kind of ties your hands and you can't do things. And like I said, I've been in the agency for quite a while, so I remember that. I remember when it was the Good Old Boys Club. You know, and if you weren't in that club, then you didn't have much of a voice. You didn't have much to say. You just had to go in there and try to do the best you can. And even when you tried to do the best you can, you had to tell somebody, I can't do this because you don't have the right insurance, or I can't do this because, you know, you're not in the right program, or we don't provide those services. And that becomes very frustrating because the reason that you got into this business was to help people, to deal with people. But we realize, too, at the same time, that as an agency, the agency has to learn how to take care of their people, too. Just like you in your own home, you know. If you're out doing everything else, helping everybody else, but you're not helping your home, then what do you got issues at home. And then they wonder why your kids are doing this and that, or why the marriage is failing. It's because you're not taking care of home first. So in order to deal with that, you got to deal with your own home, household, and make sure that you are well. And you're dealing with things, and that's why Carrie talked about mindfulness and things, and as also Elizabeth talked about dealing with issues, looking at staff needs to be in a good place in order to help other people. Now, when we first did this, we were right in the midst of the beginning of the pandemic and stuff, and it was entitled, I had entitled it, Moving Towards Social Justice Amidst a Pandemic in America, but now it's more than just that. Because when we first started talking about that, you know, like I said, the administration that we're in right now, they have no problems with dealing with the social issues. They're just saying, show me how, or let's work on that, you know, give me the ideas, which I appreciate that. And I know some organizations don't have that. You know, you got to fight the system and you got to try to work around it. But we serve an organization, and executive management are very open to that. But when we started talking about that, because we noticed staff, I mean, I'm going by what I'm experiencing too. I started seeing things out in society, and it was affecting me, and it was affecting my ability to help others because I'm frustrated, I'm upset, I'm angry at the way things are going on. And when we started talking about having a group to address the issues for, you know, staff and, you know, dealing with that, we were dealing with, first of all, we started noticing that there were a significant number of black men that were being shot and killed by law enforcement, and they weren't resisting arrest, they weren't fighting anything, but we started noticing that. Now, we already were dealing with the water crisis. There was already a mistrust with leadership in the city of Flint because they said the water was okay and then it wasn't. And then we find out that children now are having cognitive development issues because of too much lead in the water. So just think about that. That parent that thought their child was going to be normal and have a normal life, now they have to go get special services because they have cognitive delays. Their skins are breaking out with things. They're losing hair and stuff like that. And even adults too. So we were dealing with that, and many of us that worked in the agency lived in that very city. I lived in that city. And I can remember a time when my daughter, and I'm not sure if the water was a part of that, but she started having some significant medical issues that she still deals with now, and she's doing a lot better. But I wonder if that was because of the water. And I can remember her sitting in the living room, and she was just pulling hair. Her hair was coming out. Just pulling it out due to the medication, and probably, I'm not sure if it's due to the water or not. But those are issues that I had to deal with, and at the same time, going to an organization and help other people. So I had to have a platform or some place where I could talk and voice my concern. And as I stated, there was a time years ago that you could not come in there and talk. You just do as you were told, and this is the policy. But we said that we needed to address that issue. We need to address the issue. Even though Flint was very fortunate, we didn't have the issues of the police shootings and our black men being shot like that. But we were seeing it. We're being exposed. And you have to realize you don't have to be black to be affected by that. There were people that were not black that were affected by that because they saw the social injustice. We are here to help people, yet we see this going on. So we knew that that was an issue, and you know that Disney movie Encanto, we don't talk about Bruno? Well, that's kind of where we were at. You know, nobody talked about it. Nobody said anything, but yet we were in the business of helping people. But then we weren't dealing with our own issues and our own anger and our own, you know, being overwhelmed. So we said we need to address that with staff. So we need to address, you know, the police shootings, even though it wasn't in Flint, but people were feeling that. You know, my conversation, you know, you talk about the talk with your children, you know, and that talk used to be telling the boys, okay, when you meet a girl, respect her, and if you're going to have consensual sex, make sure you're protected and all that. Well, now the talk for me was when you're stopped by law enforcement, make sure your hands are on the steering wheel, don't do any sudden movement. Do whatever they say, even if you don't agree. Do not do it, because your job is to get home alive. That was the talk that I had to have with my son. My son that looked like he could have been a gangman. He had dreads, and he liked to wear his hoodie, but he wasn't. But that was the talk that we had to deal with. So we realized as an agency that if I'm feeling that way, then there are other staff members that are feeling that way. So we said that we need to come up with a platform, an audience where people could talk about that and do it in a safe manner. So we not only dealt with the water crisis where people were still upset, and still 9 years later, we're still dealing with that. It's not in the news anymore, but still people are still wondering. I don't drink the water from the tap. I do bottled water. I had to put a whole full house filter in my house just to make sure it filters out certain things, an added expense that I have to pay. But you think about the people that can't afford it. They cannot afford to get a water filtration system in this system. And now, we're dealing with the issue no longer is the bottled water being provided, and we're trying to work on that. But now they have to deal with the water in there, hoping that it's safe. So we're dealing with all of those type of issues. So we dealt with the water crisis. We're dealing with the social injustice of, the police shooting. And then what happened? COVID came. So it was the perfect storm. And then we were on total lockdown. The whole world was put on pause. And because of that, people started to see certain things because the news didn't have other distractions. So we started seeing the incidents of black men being shot, and killed and stuff. So they're sitting there and people were getting alarmed because now they didn't have any other distractions. They couldn't go out to the restaurants. They couldn't go on vacations and things of that nature. They were stuck at home. And for some people, the people at home were getting on their nerves because they were used to being able to get out of there. So then you add that other crisis that you're dealing with. So it was stress just everywhere. But people started seeing the social injustice that was going on. And once again, it wasn't just people of color, but people that were Caucasians and Hispanics were saying, this is not right. So we said we have to have a way in which people can feel comfortable and free in talking about those type of things. So we came up with the listening circle to address all those issues. So when COVID came, then that was a whole nother thing, especially in the community of color, the black community, because when they came up with the vaccination, we were saying, I'm not going to be a Tuskegee Institute test again. And it was a big issue with that. But yet people were dying by the thousands. And then we found out that a lot of times, then it was access. Communities of colors weren't getting the weren't getting the vaccinations in their community. It was going to other people, and then you had to call and you had to register for those that wanted to sign. So you were dealing with all of those traumas and issues. And some families were split right in half because some people were saying, I'm not having that stuff in me because it's messing with your DNA and all of that kind of stuff, and they came up with it too quick and things of that nature. So you had all kind of issues going on. So now think that you're working in the service and you're having issues with it. How can you address and tell other people that this is the way you need to do it or you need to do that if I feel strongly about something? So we provided a platform so staff could sit and talk about those issues and feel safe about it. We are living in a society, I feel, and this is Dexter talking, that we have become so ultra sensitive about everything that we're scared to voice our opinions. Because we're scared that we're going to be labeled a racist or we're going to be labeled this or that. Now, I do agree that we should not be speaking hate and harm to other people, but you should have a right to talk about what you believe. But we've gotten so that people are very scared about doing that because they don't want to be labeled as something. But we need to have that discussion. We need to have that hard discussion about social issues. We need to talk about, why is it that a significant number of people of color are being shot, We need to talk about why is there not equity in health care provided to people. While, if you don't have the right insurance, then you get substandard, care, or you don't get any at all. So we came up with this circle where people could be safe or feel safe in talking about it. And like I said, that whole issue with COVID, with the vaccination, has split families apart, has split agencies apart, has split churches and the community apart. But those are things that we need to be able to talk about as workers. What is your fear? How is it affecting me? And we have people, that feel very strongly, even when we dealt with the mask mandate. I have a right to wear a mask or not. Well, let's talk about that. You know, what about the people that have compromised immune systems? You know, even though it may be your right, but do you want to expose them where they can take it and then they end up, you know, having issues because they were infected by, you know, COVID-19? One of the things now that President Biden has now, you know, discontinued the national crisis is now we're dealing with people that were getting adequate health care insurance. Now they got to go back now and reapply, and it's going back to the old way. So now they're losing that. That's trauma. And we have to tell them, okay, let's see how you can work with it. They have to make a choice on either spending the money to keep the lights on and food or to spend money for, you know, medication or services that is not being covered. Those are issues. And that should affect you. It should affect me because we're here to help people. Now, we've not only started with now the COVID, the water crisis, and also dealing with social injustice, but now we got the mass shootings. Since the 1st of May, there have been over 202 mass shootings in the United States alone. And it's not just people that have a mental illness, even though the media wants to portray that. It may be somebody having a mental crisis, but they're not, necessarily having a mental illness, being diagnosed with a mental illness. But what that is saying is that people are feeling stressed and people are feeling hopeless. And they've come to the point where they realize that the only way to deal with this is that I need to go out and just shoot somebody or shoot up something because I'm frustrated and mad. You know, when I was growing up many years ago, when I was a child, you know, if you had an issue with somebody, you fight it out between them and then, you know, you're done with it. Now, people get upset, they fight with you, and then they go shoot up your mother's house and your sister's house, and they go out and they retaliate. But we're dealing with all those type of things because people are feeling hopeless, they're feeling upset. So now we're starting dealing with the issue of rights. You know, even with COVID, it got into a rights issue. You know, I should have a right not to have to take the vaccine. I should have a right not to be quarantined into my house. I should be able to go wherever I want to. But let's have a discussion about that. And as workers, we need to discuss that because once again, as I stated, how can we help other people if we're having all those feelings and anger? You know, now the big thing about gun legislation, you know, and people say, I have a right to bear arms. Yes, you do. But what do we do about those people that have automatic rifles that are going in and they're just taking out and killing children, let alone just any individual? So that's when you get into, as an organization, that you got to start having those hard conversations. You got to sit and talk, but then you got to find people that are willing to do that. And that's what we did. We started with a smaller group, and it learned to be a listening circle. And I'm going to say that the first initial meetings, they were kind of hard because people were frustrated, but they had to be able to speak their voice. And you have to allow people to do that. And you know that in working with people. If people are not allowed or feel restricted, then they're just going to pin it up and just say, okay, they're not listening to me, and it's going to come out in some other ways. But during that listening circle, we allowed people to voice their frustration, the injustice and things. And after people felt that they had a voice and it was safe, then we could start having that hard discussion and talk about, okay, why is it like that? You know, why is it that there's such a divide where people feel that if you don't agree with me, then I will get physically violent with you and I will hurt you because you don't believe the way that I believe? Where did all that come from? A lot of times it comes from, and Sean is going to talk about that, we start talking about implicit bias, and we talk about our exposure to different things. And sometimes it's not necessarily due because we want to be that way, but it's our environment, how we were brought up. But that means that we have to have a discussion to be able to acknowledge that this is not the right way to be, and then how can I change that, and how can I do that? So with the listening circles, we have to address those things. We have to talk about implicit bias. We have to talk about freedom rights. You know, Marvin Gaye, how many people remember Marvin Gaye, okay. All right. A very prolific and awesome writer, but when you look at his life, he had many demons. Drugs was his demon and dealing that. But he had an eye for the social injustice and things that were going on. And he had the song called What's Going On, if you remember that. And basically, when you look at the lyrics and stuff, it talks about all these things, you know, picket signs and, you know, and all these things. But he said, what's going on? You know, can't you see, you know, let's talk about it. And that is what we have to do. Right now, in the government, everybody's worried about the debt ceiling and what's going to happen and how if we go into default, it's going to affect everybody some kind of way. But we have to get into a point where people put politics aside, put ego aside, and say, let's just talk about it. Because it's not affecting just you and me, but it's affecting other people, everybody. And I dare say that if it's not addressed correctly, then you're going to have more reactions, anger, and people doing things. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over. But one of the things that we need to do, the strategy that makes sense, is that we need to protest about things that are not right. Now, when I say protest, it's not being violent or going out burning up stuff, but you need to say this isn't right. We need to do that. After we protest, then we need to bring up awareness, education. Why are people the way they feel? Why are people doing what they're doing? Or why do people have a stance like that? We need to talk about that. Whether you're to the far left, the far right, or in the middle, we need to be able to sit down and say, why do you believe that? Well, I believe that because of this. Okay, now that makes more sense. I understand. I may not agree, but let's talk about how can we come to a medium, a happy medium with that. So you bring awareness around of what the issues are, and then you have the discussion. Let's talk about it and come up with some kind of way that will work for everybody. And through that discussion, you come up with a solution. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to, oh, one more? No, that's Sean. I think. Okay.
Thank you, Dexter. I missed an opportunity. Liz said, is this yours or mine? So I am still so glad that you all are in the room. I'm Sean Edwards. I'm one of the senior directors at Genesee Health System, and I have the privilege of working with awesome groups of people. I know that would be every single person in the room. My question to you is, how many of you still enjoy doing what you do day in and day out? Yes, give it up for yourselves. She said, oh, me. That's me. That's me. Yay. So throw out, I'm curious, throw out in the atmosphere, use your voice. What is your role? Advocate. Program manager. SUD grant. Case manager, consulting. Clinical specialist. Fiscal intermediary. So with all of those awesome things that you all have just thrown out, would you say that it is also your job to step outside of the boundaries of your job description? Absolutely. You are human service professionals. We are all here for a reason. This is one of my favorite people. Maya Angelou, here is what she says: do the best you can until you know better. She says, then when you know better, do better. So all of us are learning. This is a perpetual journey. No one, according to Maslow, I believe, is ever really self-actualized. Would you agree with that? 100%. Thank you. I got my amen corner over here. I like that. But how do we move the agency forward? This is what we're doing. We're in perpetual motion. I am certain that that is your goal as well. Never, ever, ever compare your organization to another organization, because the culture of every organization is different. Every one of us works for someone that we're walking through the doors of the organization every morning, and we should say, I would like for us to start doing or addressing, and you fill in the blanks. Well, guess what? It's not somebody else's job, it's your job. But guess what we do, unfortunately? I've been guilty of it too, yet they don't. Well, I need to be a part of that pronoun, right? So we need to. So some of you, the question was asked earlier, how many of you have a wellness program or wellness initiatives and things of that nature? You can identify what you have, and you, as a change agent, should insert yourself and say, what should we add to the equation? Never, ever, ever, friends in the room, point to the other people and say they didn't do, because we're all a part of that. Say, if we're looking at the continuum of change, what took place in 2015, you have additional ideas in 2023 that you should add to the equation. Always remember that. You are a change agent. So racial equity leading to community wellness. Just a little bit of what we did, and I'm strongly encouraging you to add some of these tools to your toolbox. But when you're adding them, always remember that you should have a driver, a champion to drive these initiatives. You're part of the equation, but if you have a driver of the bus, we can all get there together. So why does this matter to dream big, set goals, and take action? Because the world has changed. I've been, and this is just according to the book of Sean, it may not be your vernacular, but according to my book, I've been at GHS since Christ was a baby. It's been a very long time. And I've seen change. This culture of mindfulness in the workplace, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a real thing. It's necessary across all cultures. So diversity, some people have asked me, DEI, what really is that? And it's okay to ask. That's a part of the conversation. Diversity is all are welcome here. Diversity, God bless you, means simply being diverse. It is not just about race and ethnicity. Diversity is inclusive of a lot of things. Can someone in the audience throw out what that might entail? What is diversity? Throw out a couple of words. Okay, acceptance of everyone. What else? Age, yes, somebody said age, thank you. Ageism is a part of culture. Ableism is a part of culture. Love that. What else? Genderism? Homophobia? Sizeism. Yeah. All of these things are inclusive of culture and diversity. All right? What about this one? Equity. Okay, you've seen this famous picture before. There's this thing that we call equality, and now we're looking at equity. So if you look at generationalism, say my mother and father were probably focused on equality. My grandparents just wanted to be accepted in the room. So in my grandmother's world, we're colored people. In my mother's world, we're black people. In my world, we're African Americans. And now in my children's world, we're back to black. You see how vernacular changes? So guess what? Give people grace and space. Sometimes it's about the dispensation of time in which people were born. I am not a woman who gets very easily offended. If you walk through life with offense on your face, you're going to miss out on great opportunities to teach, collaborate, and learn. Because guess what? Some people, I've been called colored, I've been called black, I've been called African American. Just don't call me the other word. And you know it starts with a B. Just don't call me that. Because I am a human, not a female dog. But here's what I want to say. Equity is where we are today. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then, what about this? Puzzle pieces. Inclusion. We all put the pieces together to make up a beautiful whole sum of humankind. This is how we're rolling. Engagement versus symbolism. Symbolism is, and here's a good definition, an artistic and poetic movement to express mystical emotions, ideas, and states of mind. Well, it looks good on paper. When you have policies and procedures, your policies are usually governed by symbolism. Someone says, you must do this, and we take off and write a policy. Well, guess what? If you're not careful, you miss the engagement piece. Engagement is an arrangement to do something or go somewhere at a fixed time. So that's putting the motion and the wheels on the bus. Okay, so don't forget, in the beginning I said we're all change agents. So what can I do? It's not someone else's job. I happen to have a large portion of DEI attached to my title, but also training and education. Customer service is another thing that I'm responsible for, right? Veteran navigation services and community outreach and faith-based initiatives. But DEI sprinkles through all of that. So we're all responsible. Engagement is our goal. Making a statement. So we at Genesee Health System set out to make a statement. With whatever it is that you're doing, you have to make a statement first. That's with everything in life. It's like a declaration. How many of you have tried something new within the past year? Okay, could it be either weight loss, weight gain, I'm gonna buy a new car, I'm gonna buy a new house, oh, I'm gonna have a child, or I'm gonna get a puppy, which we did, a blue-nosed pit bull, we got a puppy. There's 4 men at my house, 3 sons and a husband, and I'm the little bit of estrogen that's present, and we got a male pit bull. But I'm okay with that because I think I have this thing for, I shouldn't say that, I have this thing for men. I shouldn't say that. I have a husband and 3 sons, so apparently I do have this thing for men. And this blue-nosed pit bull, his name is Thor, by the way. I'm a superhero fanatic, and my boys and husband said, we're gonna name him Thor. I said, yes, I win again. So here is making this statement with whatever you do in life. Remember I said you have to start out making a statement, because once you put it out there, then it can develop its wings or its wheels and roll forward. So we made a statement. Here's what the statement says. We strongly condemn racism in all forms. That's the statement that we made. We made that statement on June 4th of 2020. This was just prior to the pandemic. Just prior. So here's what we did. We created a cultural competency plan. We had one, but it needed work. In this plan, we talked about training in our new employee orientation program. So as we were onboarding people, we said, hey, you've signed up to work for Genesee Health System. Here is something extra that's required of you. At least open your mind to the realm of possibilities. Social work is social justice. Social work is social justice. We can't be human service providers and pick, although our titles kind of say you're going to work with this population, that population, that population. But guess what? How many of you started off working, and we heard some of our introductions, in one lane and you switched over to another lane? You said, oh, I'm going to work with this population now. More tools in your toolbox were needed. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you may have been working with persons with mental illness. You may have been working with persons with an intellectual disability. Well, once you switch lanes, you have to learn more. Would you not agree? You have to learn more. Same thing here. I'm going to want to respect the people that are working with me, I with them, and all of the cultural significance that's attached to them. Guess how you do that? You simply ask questions. Dexter talked about we're kind of afraid as a society. We become a very polite society. Would you not agree? Polite in one way and chaotic in another. The politeness in our culture of human service professionalism says, well, you might not want to ask that because you'll offend someone. Well, guess what? That's a not so good way to look at things. I need to ask you questions in order to work with you so that I don't perpetually offend you. So we made this statement, number one, and then we started looking at the tools in our toolbox. So what was our position as an organization? The goal was to hire that heart of compassion. We work with technical skills all the time. You have to have an MSW for this. You have to have a BA in psychology for that. You have to have whatever your credentials are, you name it, we do it. Those are technical skills. But what about the soft skills? How do you know right up front when you hire someone, how do you know if they're a good fit or not for your organization? I'm asking you, how do you know? Yes. Look at the person's values. That's added value. Thank you so much, sir, for that. Yes.
So I just recently had to let a staff go yesterday
Uh-huh.
because she just didn't fit with what we were looking for. They interview very well and they say they have the values, but then when you get them in that position, it just all goes out the window. So it's really hard to judge based on just that interview if they're going to be a good fit.
Absolutely. Would you not agree with my two friends? So, thank you for sharing. So, guess what? We did something at Genesee Health System that kind of helped a little bit with that. Okay, so we're good at looking at people's body language, posture, and movement, and what they say and how they say it. Okay, tone, volume, and cadence, voice inflection, flat, or very exuberant. Looking at the technical skills on the paper, but you got to do a deeper dive. Here's what we did. We added a DEI question to all of our interviews. Yeah, we did that. So when we did that, and know this, team, whenever you change or add anything, you're going to get naysayers and you're going to get, yay, champions, let's move forward. Don't let naysaying stop you. It'll cripple you if you're not careful. You'll be stuck. Don't do that. Move forward. You're going to get that. Say going in, I know that I'm going to get some resistance. But guess what? Of all the great people in America and the other countries worldwide, something was there to stop them too, but they pressed forward. So adding that diversity question. So when I'm sitting down to interview candidates, I have people to interview Friday, by the way. Guess what? I ask that question. And if they don't have an answer, it's okay. I want that candidate to say to me, I really don't know about that, but I'm very eager to learn. Tell me more. An interview should be a two-way process. So as a candidate, you're showing your level of vulnerability. And as a hiring senior director, guess what? I'm interested in you because you want to know more. But when you fake it and you just throw up 3 words, oh, DEI is, no, I want to know, how do you work with people? All of those things that you mentioned, ableism, genderism, culturalism, ageism, those things are important values that make up our vast organization. So I need for you to say to me, I really don't know the answer, but I'm willing to learn more. Tell me more. Technical versus soft skills. And then there's the educational component. What does your plan look like outside of the book? So when new employees enter into our new employee orientation and our annual cultural competence class, we're asking them to look at themselves through the lens of implicit bias. Open up yourself. Guess what? We all have implicit biases. We all, every last one of us in the room. Guess what? Because there's this thing that we call stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. I want you to stay away from the discrimination section, but know that we all prejudge. That's prejudice. And stereotypes come to us from what? Upbringing, society, experience, media. This brain is so vast. Point to your brain. Help me out. Point to your brain. Say, I am so vast that I can't help myself. Yeah. I talked about the new dog Thor that we have. I hate to say, we weren't dog people. We were not dog people. And my boys said, Mom, Dad, you never let us have dogs when we were little. And I said, we were always so busy. You guys played every sport on the planet. We didn't have time for an extra thing in the house. But now, I'm like, the very people that I judged, dog people, I used to see Dog Mom, and I'm like, what is her deal? Dog Dad, oh, this is my furry baby. I'm like, cut it out. And now guess what? I'm one of those people. Thor is 4 months old, and I've fallen in love. So my point for sharing that with you is never close your mind. This thing is so vast. You have to say to yourself, I do have biases. Sometimes I'm unaware of them. I judge people. I judge things. But as a professional, all of us are, it is your role and goal and my hope that you say, bring it on. Let me learn some things about myself. Why? Always ask the question, why? Why do I think the way that I think about this person, that person, or this group? Why do I? What's the greatest contributor to that? And if you open up your portal here, you'll find, if you sit tight, those answers will start to come to you. My grandmother, in her world, we were colored. My grandmother, I'm going to tell you this, I'm just going to be transparent here, was a very, very light-skinned woman. Because her mother, and I'm going to use vernacular of the day, not today, of that day, her mother was mulatto. She had one black parent, one white parent. And guess what? They didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about that. And I used to say when I was a little girl, Grandma, why is your nose so keen and pointy? I can be real, right? Can I be real? Are you my friends in the room? Okay, I'm a child, and I'm looking at her nose, and I'm looking at my nose, and I'm like, there's a difference. Why are my lips full? Mine. And she would say, oh, it's just that secretive they were. Why did I share that with you? Because my grandmother influenced who I was as a human. So remember I said open up your portal and say, why do I think that way about that thing? Guaranteed, you'll find your answers very quickly. But when you walk around Earth without ever even asking yourselves those questions, you won't address things. We won't address things. So ask those questions. So we bring people into the classroom and we have these conversations. Now let me point out what else we decided to do. We created the resolution, and the resolution said on June 25th of 2020 that we will be an anti-racist organization and we will promote our resolution. We will tell the world this is who we are as an organization. We promoted it with staff, community, and the world. We're not hiding it. Big old resolution right there. Okay, so on 3/24 of 22, guess what we did? We released another resolution to support gender, sexual, diverse resolution, promoted again by staff and community. We're telling the world that we support the LGBTQ community. We support all cultures, This is who we are as an organization. But if you don't make a statement, guess what? You're kind of like, whatever. Yeah, we do. It's important for you to make that statement. Stand by me. Genesee Health System stands with the Asian American and Pacific Islander community in unity against hatred, racism, and violence. Guess where we put that? We blasted it on our social media page. Making a statement. So about this cultural competency plan, there's cultural competence education. I like to think of it this way as cultural humility. Competence means I'm kind of learning a little bit more, and I think I have just enough information to work alongside you, with you. But humility says I am going to make a concerted effort to work with you and learn more about you and you, me. Humility, big difference. New employee orientation, different focus areas, training and initiatives. You know, implicit bias education is a requirement, but that's how all things start out. First, they start out as a requirement, and then it's up to us to say, okay, if it's a requirement, I might need to learn a little bit more about this. Why is it important to work with myself in confronting behaviors and attitudes that I have about other human beings? This was one of our listening circles. This was listening circle number 25. Today we are up to, I believe, about 31, Carrie. Would you say about 31 listening circles? Perpetual motion. What we do is we realize that if I sit and listen, I'm more likely to then begin to appreciate you that much more. I have to listen. I can't use my stereotypes and say, oh, yep, I'm just going to pick on myself. All African American women tend to think this way. Not true. I'm unique. Right? You're all unique. So in our circles, we had to develop thick skin. We did. We set up I would read the safety rules right up front. I'd say, hey, this is a safe space. Please, what goes on in the listening circle stays in the circle. It's not meant for other people because they didn't join the circle. So if you're not careful, guess what? Things can be taken out of context. Oh, did you hear? I'm just going to pick on my friend Carrie, because I can. Oh, did you hear Carrie? She said this at the listening circle. Well, guess what? It's out of context, and she's not there to defend herself. She's not there to say, oh, no, that was not my heart's intentions. I'm this person who says, well, charge it to my head, not my heart. My brain did something different than what my heart really intended to do. So, listening circles. Have that safe space for people to come in and talk. So our listening circles have evolved. We started off saying, just bring your voice. And now we have it set up where we have topics of discussion. So people can come in and join the conversation. And we listen to everyone. It's not like your traditional meeting where somebody is hogging up and taking up all the time and you don't get a chance to get a word in edgewise. In a circle, we call on, hey, so-and-so is ready to say something. Come on, bring it up, use your voice. We try to minimize the chat feature. These are words that before 2020, we just didn't have. We didn't say things like, your mic's on mute. We didn't say, can you mute yourself? We didn't say, drop it in the chat. These are new terms that before March 13th of 2020, we never stated those things before. So listening circles, big, powerful, powerful thing to do. Moving forward, action strategies should be relevant and obtainable. If you don't, and attainable. If you don't allow yourself space and grace by beginning with listening to people, you'll take off, and when I say you, I'm talking about all of us. If you're not careful, you'll take off and you'll miss the mark. You need to have all of the people at the table using their voice. Diversity versus inclusion. What's the difference? Well, I'll tell you. Diversity means I'm going to send out this party invitation and I'm going to get a good representative population of all my friends. They're going to be it's going to be multicultural. I'm inviting all these people. Inclusion is this. Well, when they show up to the party, who's asked to dance? Are you asked to dance? Are you asked to dance? Are you asked to dance? Is he asked to dance? That's the difference. Showing up and then asking people to truly be a part of that inner court. That's the difference. Okay? Calling all champions. What did we do? I see some duplicative slides here, so I'm just moving forward. Calling all champions. All are invited when there's diversity. Inclusivity, we established cultural champions. We said, I'm going to put we sent out the clarion call and said, hey, if you have something to offer, we want you, like Uncle Sam, we want you. And people came in and said, hey, I want to be representative of the LGBTQ population. I want to be representative of the Asian American population. I want to be representative of, you name it. It's so many vast cultures. I want to bring my authentic self to the table. We said, yes, it was better than what we expected. And this is how some of that looked. So here's me doing a game of Let's Make a Deal. We open up our doors. Here's one of our staff who was so excited to reach inside of the box. She was so excited. She said, oh, now what we do here, and look at this. Here's even the delivery guy who's coming through the door to deliver a package, and he said, I want to play. And I said, oh, this is so cool. Here's one of our staff who works in the pharmacy department, someone who works in case management. So what we do is, and then check this out. Here's even more. Here's a person who received services who was so proud to talk about his sobriety and how long he's been sober. He said, I wanna show you guys something, and we were so excited. This is someone who was there to just pick up his mom from work. He's like, I'm here to get my mom, but I want to play. We made it such an exciting game in our lobby where we're teaching people about various cultures. So you pull something and you ask we ask a question and you answer the question. And if you get the question right, we said, hey, just like Let's Make a Deal. Do you want the prize that is attached to this, or would you like to go through door number 2? You know how that game goes. People got so excited. It was something that we didn't realize was going to take flight the way that it did. And we actually gave people prizes for answering questions. We were so surprised at how much people knew. That helped us feel better because we're like, oh, you know about that? I mean, simple questions to harder questions. We were like, oh, wow, guess what? It added value to the person's knowledge base and to the people who thought nobody's going to know about that in the, I'm just going to pick on me, African-American community. Nobody's going to know about that. We were shocked. So it made us more what? More connected as a team. So workplace initiatives, guess what we did? We did nominations and the traveling trophy. So people nominate people who they feel are cultural champions in their area. And based on the nominations and who's ever awarded, we had 5 people select this person. So this is the cultural champion of the month. We go, we take balloons. I'm gonna just skip. We take balloons. Right here, we give them a gift card and the traveling trophy. So she's being awarded as the cultural champion. She was nominated by her supervisor and a couple of her other staff. Well, guess what? Next month, she's responsible to join the caravan to pass the trophy to the next individual. So by the time we get to the end of the 12th month, we've got 12 people walking with us to present this trophy to the last person of the month, and then we started back over next year. This is called, people are recognized by their peers of the good work that they're doing. It's not just about your supervisor, manager, director, whomever, but it's about, hey, everybody notices what you're doing. So I'm gonna go back really quickly. Cookbook. We put out, hey, everybody, send your cultural recipes in, where they come from, and how to make your delicious dish. Give me a little bit of the history about this particular culture and why they make this dish. We got a lot of input, and we're making our GHS cookbook at the close of the year based on the recipes that we've received. Then we had the woman's tea. Okay, here's the tea. Look at who's sitting at the table. We've got Eduardo here. He's not a female, but he wanted to be a part of this. We've got Tyra teaching people tea etiquette, right? We inherited my great-grandmother's teacup collection, and I said, do not break the teacups. But we purchased every single participant there with their own teacup. Share, that's ageism, right? Share about that. We're supersized today. Nobody wants to drink out of the little teacup. I'm like, I gotta go back about 5 times from this. But it kind of taught me, well, but they weren't, supersized in the generation of where teacups come from. We gave them gifts and prizes and things of that nature, but we had them answer questions and learn of the contributions that women have made in history. Because guess what? Women have not been at the table for as long. All right? Here's what I want to say and leave you with: good, great people. If you are a part of an organization, you are a part of the picture. P-I-T-C-H-E-R, not P-I-C-T-U-R-E. The organization is responsible for pouring into the cup. That would be each of us individually. And then we, of all those titles and job responsibilities that you've mentioned, what you do, is then responsible to pour the cup in the river. And the river represents the people of whom we serve. Can't do it with just the cup, but the organization, the culture that you've signed up for is supposed to pour into you and then you into the river. Does that make sense? So, become an ally. Even if you don't agree, respect. And I know that you do that. But guess what? Even if it's in your heart to agree and respect, you have to use your mouth to let the person know, I'm on your team. I support you. Questions, comments, or concerns? Let me see your hand if you are a champion. All right. Well, let's give it up for our champions. Feel free to reach out to us at Genesee Health System. If you need a launching pad or you need some ideas, suggestions, things of that nature, we're always here because guess what? We're all in Michigan and we're all at the same party. All right. Thank you for your time today. Yes. You ready for your code? All righty. Your code out is 98. 98. All righty. Have a good rest of your conference.